Hello everyone and welcome back to the Bird Artist Cottage. I'm Tara Kate and it's wonderful to welcome you back for another studio vlog. I have a lot of content for you today. We're going to start off with, yes, that is where we start. Yay. Just calm your ass down. I have a lot of content for you today. We're going to start off with a segment about how I use the Things app, and I'm going to show you how I'm organizing my illustration project for the book I'm working on using the app. I've used this app for well over a year now, and I use it for all aspects of my life. But I'm going to share how I'm organizing this particular project to show you with how I'm keeping up with all of the things I have to do and how I'm going to meet all my deadlines, because there are deadlines. I've also got a speed drawing from Procreate of the mushroom that you saw on the welcome image. You may have noticed this bracelet that I wear in all my videos. The inscription inside the bracelet reads, "Leap and the net will appear." I'm a big fan of making big leaps, and in my life I've made several. In this episode today, I'm going to tell you the story of one of my biggest leaps, and it's the story of how birds saved my life. I also have some art supplies unboxing for you, as well as swatching out some Caran gouache, and a few things to catch you up on before we get started. First, I had a new little visitor to the cottage. I came in one morning and found this little frog hopping around on the floor. I have no idea how he got in, and he seemed very, very happy to leave. Also, I've been working on changing my Patreon rewards, and I wanted to just take a moment and tell you a little bit about that, because you may not know that I have a Patreon. I actually started my Patreon before I started my YouTube channel. I have two very precious and much treasured patrons, but I'd like to attract more. Because I haven't been attracting new patrons, I took a long, hard look at my patron tier rewards and decided to redo those so that I could make my rewards more attractive to a broader range of people. My $20 tier is called Happy Larks, and I've added a monthly vinyl sticker, a new image every month, along with a monthly video sketchbook tour. Sketchbook tours are so popular here on YouTube, but it's not something I can do every month on YouTube, but I can do it every month for my patrons. So at the $20 tier, you'll get a monthly video of all of the sketching I've done throughout the past month. And after 3 months of patronage, I'm going to be making little zines of my art to mail to you personally. The $10 tier is called Lucky Ducks. The Lucky Ducks also get a monthly sketchbook tour, but as a blog post. I sketch all the time, and you'll get to see what I'm working on every month in photos. You'll also receive a printable download or computer wallpaper, and you'll get a new image every month for your personal use, as well as a 10% discount on all of my shop items when I reopen my shop, which is coming up soon. The Feathered Friends tier is my $5 tier, and there you get early access to all of my YouTube videos, a weekly blog post with photos and work in progress, personal updates, and projects I'm working on, as well as a monthly patrons-only vlog post that I'll record at the end of every month. You'll also receive monthly phone wallpaper downloadables and line art and photo reference for your personal use from my sketching. So I hope that you will check out my Patreon and consider becoming a patron. I wanted to share a little bit about how I use the Things app to organize my illustration project. In fact, I use the Things app to organize all of my projects and all of my tasks. I want to give a couple of caveats before I start. This is not an app review. So if you're looking for a Things app review, this is not an app review, nor is this a tutorial. I'm not going to tell you how I set all this up or how I set up my system. If you're interested in learning about that, please do leave a comment in the comment section below. I'm more than open to recording a tutorial about how I use the Things app. I will say though that the reason I chose Things over other options, spreadsheets are crap for task management. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but spreadsheets are not responsive. They are very clunky. They do not present tasks to you on a daily basis in a way that makes them actionable. They're terrible, terrible for task management. I don't recommend that anybody use spreadsheets. And I'm not a fan of bullet journaling because you have to write things over and over again. And frankly, I've got enough work without adding more work. So I depend on an electronic system, and I've used an electronic system for task management for quite a long time. Sirens, can you hear those? So let's take a look at how I'm organizing this project. I first created the project in Things, as you're seeing it here. I gave it just a loose title of 2020 Birds Book because the title of the book really hasn't been determined yet by the authors. It does have a deadline on there of when the contract is due. And then in this notes section, which is the thing you're seeing here at the top, we're seeing some of the notes that I had made in Evernote as I was doing some of my scheduling and planning. Now below that, I've put in all of the main tasks that are required to complete this project. And you'll see that down toward the bottom, some of them have deadlines, and then the one at the very top has a star. So let's take a deeper look at the one with the star. And this is part of what I love about using an app like this, is this app actually gives me the flexibility to make a checklist and to use that checklist over and over again. So you can see that the part of the project I'm working on right now is locating photo reference for each species. I put in the notes that I wanted between 3 and 5 images per species. And then I created a checklist and put every single one of the species in it. And as I find the photo reference for that species, I can then check it off. So you can see that I have long-billed curlew, Oregon junco, pinyon jay, and a few more species to go to collect photo reference. Now down at the very bottom of this, you'll see that it has a star and it's registered for today. I may not complete this task today, and in that case I'm going to let it roll over to tomorrow. And I'll frequently do that with things that take more than one day to complete, that I work on it and then I let it roll over to the next day, and so it just reappears until the task is finally complete. Another way of doing that would be to duplicate a task and set it for specific days. In this case, letting it roll over works fine for me. So if we go down now to complete full sketch of each species, you'll see that here is the same checklist, but the species are all unchecked because obviously we haven't gotten to that part of the project yet. What I did to create my checklist was I had to keep up with every species that the author wanted illustrated, and I put those into a spreadsheet so that I could quickly alphabetize, and then I just simply cut and paste. I opened up Things, I tapped on the checklist button, and then when I hit paste, it pasted the entire list in as a checklist. Super easy, super fast, and then I was able to do that everywhere where I needed a full checklist of the species. Now, one of the things about doing the work here is that between photo reference and full sketch, I need to do the thumbnails. So there's the work on thumbnails, 3 to 5 for each species. And then there is a deadline here of November the 8th. Contact the author to schedule the meeting so that we can select, and that should be pose selection, not post, to do the post selection from the thumbnails. And then once the author gives approval for which poses he likes, then I'll move on to the full sketches. And you can see that I've worked through all the main tasks for this project. Complete final paintings, scan the paintings, create the final print-ready images. So that would be where I'm doing all of the work in Photoshop to make sure that these are ready for the printer. And then locating photo reference for each biome and so on. So that's how I'm using Things to organize this very complicated project. And as you can see, it makes keeping up with where I am in the process very easy and very clear. Things is available for the iPad. I use it on my phone. There's also a watch app that I use. I think it's available for the desktop. I'll check, and if it is, I'll put a link in the description below. So that's how I'm using things. And if you have questions, please do leave those in the comments below. Because I am turning 60 this month of November, I decided I would like to share a little bit more of my life story with you. And so today I'm going to be telling you the story of how birds saved my life. So a little bit of backstory. I married quite young the first time, my first marriage. I was 20 and I married a man he was not a nice man. He was an abusive man. I was studying to become a nurse, and that was not really my career of choice either. My dad was worried that I could not make a living as a writer, which is what I really wanted to do. And so he encouraged me to choose a practical career, and the practical career that he kind of chose for me was nursing. And so I earned a degree in nursing and became a surgical nurse. During the latter part of nursing school and shortly after I graduated, I became more and more interested in bird watching. Now, I did not know anyone who was a bird watcher. None of my family were birders. So it was kind of a quirky, sort of out of left field thing for me. But I became interested in birding and I started meeting other birders and I started going on birding trips. Along this time, as I was working as a nurse and becoming a birder, I started feeling like I was being called to do something other than what I was doing. But I didn't know what the calling really was. I just knew there was this yearning, this deep yearning inside me to do something, and I really didn't know what that something was. And I ended up on a birding trip to Costa Rica. And while I was in Costa Rica, I visited a place called Rara Avis. Rara Avis is a privately owned biological reserve. At the time, it was owned by Amos Bien. Amos has since passed away, God rest his soul. Amos took me up onto the canopy web cable car thing. It was a bucket, a metal sort of bucket like you might see a power line worker using, except it was suspended on a cable and you stepped into the bucket and then a cable motor started to run, and it would take you out over the river and the waterfall that was there next to the hotel out here in the middle of the rainforest. And so as we came up off of the ground and we moved out over this ravine, the ground just dropped away beneath us. It was very sunny, and we moved out over the waterfall, La Catarata, and I was standing there looking down at this roaring waterfall with all this sunlight around me. And I suddenly knew what the calling, still makes me emotional all these years later. I suddenly knew what the calling was. I knew I was supposed to live there at Rara Avis, that I was supposed to be there and to study birds, and I was supposed to be at Rara Avis. It was this shocking, complete certainty. And it was such a big shift, such a huge leap from where I was as a nurse in an abusive relationship, living in Louisiana, to suddenly thinking, oh, I'm supposed to live in Costa Rica and study birds, that I basically cried for the next 2 weeks. And I went back home to Louisiana and was just a wreck. I mean, literally crying constantly. And one morning I woke up and was laying there in bed sobbing, and something inside me sort of put its foot down and said, enough of that. And I got up and I went to the phone and I placed my very first international phone call ever. I called Amos and I said to him, when I was there, you said if I came back, you would give me a job. Were you serious? And he said, yes. And so I packed my things. Everybody thought I was crazy. Actually, I had just gone sane. I packed up my things. I left my abusive husband, and I went back to Costa Rica. And I lived at Rara Avis, studying birds and the rainforest for about 6 months. After I got to Rara Avis and I learned the names, the scientific names of hundreds of plants, I could remember them all. We would have these visits from biologists, and I would just soak up. They would talk to me about things, and I could remember it all. I didn't know I was smart. I had been told I was stupid so many times. I didn't know I was smart. And then I came back to the States, and I studied for my graduate record exam, the GRE. I got admitted to the University of Illinois, and that is where I met Douglas, the love of my life, and we got married. We've been married almost 30 years now. But that was the big leap I took from a miserable, really sad existence into the great unknown that started me on the path to where I am now, here, as a bird artist, married to a wonderful man who studies birds. So that's a little bit of my life story. I have to admit that I felt very vulnerable about telling the story of how birds saved my life. I was raised in an environment in which I was told over and over again that my voice and my story, that those were unimportant, that I was not worth listening to. And so I grew up believing that what I said didn't matter and that I was not seen or heard or acknowledged. And I came to believe that I never would be. And I finally realized that I needed to learn to see and hear and acknowledge myself. And that owning my story and appreciating my story is one of the most powerful things I can do for myself and one of the most healing. And I have finally come to fully embrace my story and how it contributed to the me that I am now. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about what life has been like for me as a full-time artist, here's a video you might enjoy. See you next time. Thanks for watching.